I was born 1925, Nebraska, Omaha, and from a very young age I knew the system was flawed. My dad, Earl, was a civil rights activist, supporter of Marcus Garvey, a black nationalist. White supremacists didn't like what he had to say, and we had to move twice before my 4th birthday. Tried to elude them, but they tracked us down. In 1929, they burnt our home to the ground. 2 years later, my dad went out and never came back. His body was found lying across the trolley tracks. Police ruled it an accident. The case was dropped, but we all knew white supremacists murdered my pop. My mom had a breakdown without my dad. She was committed to a mental institution. It was bad. Me and my 7 siblings couldn't go anywhere. We were split up, sent to orphanages and foster care. Life was difficult after my family collapsed. Still, I graduated middle school, top of my class. Told my teacher I wanted to be a lawyer. Go figure. He said that's no realistic goal for a nigga. So instead, I dropped out of school and got lost in the 1942 underworld of Boston. Bounced from Boston to Detroit by 1943. Had a job at a nightclub at NYC. Like many young men, I was examined for the draft to ensure I wouldn't have to go. I just laughed. Can't wait to kill us some crackers to make them nervous. I was classified mentally disqualified for service. By 1946, I lived the life of a thug. Gambling, robbing, pimping, prostitutes, dealing drugs. I was bound to get in trouble with that kind of career, and I wound up in prison for 8 to 10 years. But I stayed busy during my incarceration, utilized the time to further my education. During that period, I sharpened my mind, reading almost every decent book I could find. My brother Reginald came to visit me in prison, told me about his conversion to the Muslim religion. The Nation of Islam, NOI for short, was the organization that had his support. I studied the group's teachings and became an avid reader of Elijah Muhammad, the NOI's leader. He taught something I was already believing. White society actively kept blacks from achieving. He called for a black state separate from the whites, and after studying his teachings, I decided he was right. So when I was finally paroled in 1952, I found him and asked him what he wanted me to do. I became a devoted follower of the nation, quickly rising through the ranks of the organization. I preached their mixed message of freedom and hate, as well as their demand for a separate black state. I saw America like coffee in your coffee pot. When you have black coffee, it's strong and hot, but if you put in too much cream, it gets cool and weak. Used to wake you up, now it puts you to sleep. My slave name Little made me feel ashamed, so I changed it to X, signify my lost name. Married my wife Betty X in 1968. My hard work was paying off, everything was great. Appointed minister, articulate, intelligent, and witty. Started mosques in Detroit and New York City. Had conviction and charisma like nobody else. Building up the NOI almost by myself. When I first joined, group membership was few, only 500 people in 1952. But I attracted new members, and thanks to me, it was up to 30,000 by 1963. I was born to be a leader, didn't even have to try. Became national spokesman for the NOI, using news, radio, and TV to communicate the group's message all across the United States. I have a need for freedom, I cannot ignore it. Take freedom out your vocab if you won't die for it. You want someone to give you freedom? No one can. If freedom's what you want, take it if you're a man. I can't separate being peaceful and being free, cause if I don't have my freedom, peace can never be. Non-violence is fine if it changes the institution, but I'm for violence when non-violence postpones the solution. I want human rights by any means necessary. Someone puts his hand on me, I'll send him to the cemetery. I don't even call it violence when it's self-defense. No, I believe, my friends, that is called intelligence. Sure, I believe in the brotherhood of all men, but brotherhood's a two-way street, my friends. Won't waste my brotherhood, as I'm sure you'll agree, on anyone who doesn't want to practice it with me. Even more than Elijah Muhammad, I became an influential leader and a household name. I was a media magnet, but as my fame grew, the government started paying more attention too, because our membership rates were so high. The group was infiltrated by the FBI. They wiretapped and monitored the NOI. Even turned out my own bodyguard was a spying while dealing with the government spying on me. At the height of civil rights in 1963, I also found out my mentor was a hypocrite outside of marriage. He taught one should be celibate, but Elijah Muhammad has secret relations with 6 different women in the organization. organization. Some of these relationships resulted in kids, and Muhammad asked me to cover up what he did. Before I believed he was a prophet of God. Now I realized he was nothing but a fraud. I refused to cover up his affairs and lie. And in 1964 I left the NOI, went on pilgrimage to Mecca. Later that year, the trip altered my life, made everything clear. I'd only preached to African Americans before, but in Saudi Arabia I saw so much more. I visited many other countries in the area, traveling to Egypt, Ethiopia, Algeria, Ghana, Guinea, Tanzania, Liberia, Sudan, Senegal, Morocco, Nigeria. I'd focused on my race, ignoring all others. Now I met blind, blue-eyed men I could call brothers. I had a new message when I returned to the States: integration and hope, not segregation and hate. I wanted truth. I didn't care who told it anymore. I wanted justice, no matter who it was for. I saw human rights as something we all have at birth, rights that should be recognized all over earth. But the head of my former organization, Elijah Muhammad, marked me for assassination. He even joked that he would cut off my head. His people told my wife I was as good as dead. When I returned to America, they repeatedly tried. Couldn't leave home without bodyguards at my side. I was stressed, but not the type of man to run. Instead, I peered out my window with my hand on my gun. They fired by my home in 1965. Luckily, my family and I escaped alive, but I knew that I couldn't hold them off forever. A week later, they succeeded in their ruthless endeavor. While speaking in Manhattan's Audubon Ballroom in front of 400 supporters, I met my doom when 3 men with guns rushed up to the stage and shot me 16 times at close range. Hospital said I was dead before I arrived on February 21st, 1965. My name is Malcolm X. Freedom is my dream. So in defense of liberty, I had to be extreme. I admit that my views were not always correct, but by being sincere, I gained people's respect. 6 days after my life had ended, my funeral was held, 1,500 attended. Afterwards, my friends sent the gravediggers away and buried me themselves on that mournful day. But my message lives on, though my body is buried. Human rights for all by any means necessary.